This just broke moments ago. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We're getting dribs and drabs of this, and we had some pictures already, and here's some. There are some that show Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and others. None of the released images depicts any misconduct. None is believed to depict underage girls. It was not immediately clear when or where.
Top line here is that there's no client list, according to Ghislaine Maxwell, and there are no high-powered individuals that were on any sort of list. She did not incriminate anybody in that 9-hour interview that she did with the deputy.
Stop right there. Virginia Giuffre said this loud and clear on a public platform just weeks before she died. I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I considering ending my life. That statement wasn't hidden. It wasn't unclear. It was direct and out in the open for everyone to hear. Then suddenly, she passed away on April 25th, 2025, according to her own family. And at that same moment, Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in a federal prison camp living in conditions that don't even feel like prison. She's got a laptop, private meals brought right to her, bottled water while others drink tap, solo showers, and even someone holding an umbrella over her head so the Texas sun doesn't touch her. So what are we really looking at here? Because both of these things don't add up in the same system. Either people are being held accountable or they're being protected, but right now it looks like both are happening at once and nobody can explain how that makes sense. Let's break down what's actually going on with Maxwell because it gets even more strange. She was convicted and sentenced to 20 years. A real sentence, not some small technical detail you can brush off. But reports from the New York Times and prison consultant Sam Manel say something very different is happening inside. She's getting privileges most inmates wouldn't even dare ask for. A laptop, meals delivered to her cell, bottled water, private showers, and even access to staff-only areas to watch TV alone. And when she steps outside, it's a whole different level. Guards are literally holding an umbrella over her just to block the sun. That's not incarceration, that's something else entirely. It looks like a strange kind of VIP treatment in a place where nobody is supposed to be treated like a VIP at all. And it gets even more intense. Manel says inmates who dare to complain about Maxwell's perks aren't just ignored, they're warned and pressured hard. Some are reportedly threatened with solitary confinement or even transferred to tougher prisons if they speak up. They're being told, do not discuss her. Do not put anything in writing. Do not talk about her on the phone. Do not make any trouble regarding Ms. Maxwell, or we will move you to another location.
It all together with a bow for her, doesn't it? She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing, but the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
Is and never was part of the Epstein files. She was sentenced in 2025. This was an interview by Trump's lawyer to protect Trump from the fallout about the Epstein files. What this really is nothing but a sketchy PR stunt by the Department of Justice. And we have seen this movie before. The Maxwell interview is to the Epstein files what the Barr letter was to the Mueller investigation.
That's not subtle, that's direct pressure. Think about what that really means. The Bureau of Prisons isn't just giving her special treatment. They're actively shutting people down who question it. That's not passive favoritism, that's enforcement, and it hits different when you really look at it. And the timing makes everything feel even more off. Last July, Maxwell had a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Not long after that, she was transferred from a medium security prison in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, a high-level meeting, then suddenly she's in an easier facility, followed by a wave of perks nobody else seems to get. You don't have to jump to wild conclusions to start asking serious questions about what that meeting was really about. So that's one side of the story. A convicted trafficker is doing time, but somehow doing it in comfort that most people don't even get outside prison walls. Now flip it around and look at Virginia Giuffre. She was one of the most visible survivors connected to this entire situation. She spoke out, she named names, and she even wrote a memoir putting everything on record. She refused to fade away. In April 2025, just weeks before the first major release of the Epstein files, she suddenly passed away. Her family called it a tragic loss, and that part is real. But there's more that makes this situation feel deeply unsettling. Just weeks before her death, she had already been hit by a car in a hit and run. The driver was never found. No answers, no closure. She actually survived that crash, made it through, And then not long after, she was gone. And this is where everything starts to feel seriously off. Right before her passing, Giuffre posted a warning, and it needs to be read exactly as she said it. She wrote, "I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I at risk of self-harm. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me for the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them." She didn't stop there either. She added that too many evil people wanted to see her quieted. That's not the voice of someone dealing with private struggles. That sounds like someone who felt watched and threatened. She made it clear she believed there were people who wanted her silence, and then she passed away. After that, her memoir was released, but not in a complete form. Reports say entire sections were missing, not just edited or blacked out, but completely gone. Pages that were supposed to be there had disappeared right around the time of her death, which only adds more confusion to everything. You don't have to go beyond what's already documented to see how troubling this looks. This is someone who clearly stated she was not at risk of self-harm, who survived a hit and run, who warned about being silenced, and then passed away soon after, with parts of her final work missing. That is not a clean or simple story at all. That's a wound that doesn't just close. Now hold both of these realities in your head at the same time. Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence, yet she's sitting there with a laptop and someone shading her with an umbrella. Meanwhile, Giuffre passed away from self-harm, even after clearly saying she was not contemplating self-harm at all. That's two completely different realities happening inside the same system. It starts to feel like the system is doing two opposite things at once, punishing on one side while protecting on the other. Sometimes it even feels like it's happening around the same circle of people, just from different angles. That contradiction alone should make you stop and really think. And the real question that should be pressing on your mind is this: is any of this just coincidence? Because when you start stacking all these details together, it stops looking like random chaos and starts feeling like something far more deliberate. Look at the timing again. Giuffre passed away just weeks before the Epstein files were expected to be released. Not months, not years, just weeks. She was a key voice, still speaking out, still writing, still active. And then suddenly she wasn't there anymore. At the same time, Maxwell gets moved to a minimum security camp right after a private meeting with a high-ranking Justice Department official. Then suddenly, she's receiving special treatment, private meals, extra comfort, while other inmates are being warned to stay silent or face consequences. That's not subtle at all. That sends a message, whether it was meant to or not. And this is where things take an even more unsettling turn, because Maxwell herself has gone on record saying she does not believe Epstein's death was due to self-harm. Her exact words were clear: "I do not believe he passed by his own hand." She didn't hesitate to say that. She also claimed the people responsible are still out there, walking free. But then she stops short. She won't name anyone, won't point a finger, won't give the details that could change everything. And here's what makes it hit even harder. She's sitting in a federal prison camp, living with perks that would frustrate most inmates while holding information that could blow this entire situation wide open. But she's not speaking up. She's staying quiet. Instead, she's comfortable, and that comfort doesn't look random. It looks controlled. It starts to feel less like coincidence and more like leverage. So what is really going on here? Is Maxwell just a convicted criminal serving her time, or is she something else entirely? Someone being protected and kept comfortable for staying silent? Because both of those things can't logically exist at the same time, yet everything we're seeing keeps pointing to both. And then there's the government side of this, which only adds more confusion. Transparency was promised. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and it was signed into law in November 2025.
Underage. How do you just have this be so one-sided? It is, I mean, it's such a miscarriage of justice. This is not what justice is supposed to look like. It's just, it's incredibly disappointing.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy.
That should have meant clarity, answers, something solid. But months before that, back in July 2025, the Justice Department had already said Epstein did not maintain a client list and that no more files would be released. So how does that line up? First, they say no list exists. Then a law is passed demanding transparency. Then files start coming out, but not the names people are actually looking for. That's not a straight path, that's a loop. And right in the center of that loop is Maxwell, staying silent, while everything around her keeps raising more questions about why she appears to be living better than the very people impacted by her actions. Now, here's something else that keeps getting pushed to the side in all of this. The same prison consultant who exposed Maxwell's perks also revealed what happened when she first arrived at that Texas facility. Inmates were given strict direct instructions. Do not discuss her. Do not put anything in writing. Do not talk about her on the phone. Do not make any trouble. That's not casual guidance, that's a warning. That goes way beyond simple favoritism. That's a protective barrier being put in place around her. They're not just allowing her to have extra comforts, they're making sure nobody interferes with it. Other inmates are being pressured to stay silent just to protect her environment. That kind of institutional shielding is not something you see for the average convicted felon. That level of protection usually shows up when someone is being kept in a certain position for a reason. It starts to look less like coincidence and more like control, like someone wants to keep her exactly where she is, comfortable and quiet. And through all of this, that warning from Giuffre keeps echoing in the background. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. She wrote that herself, she posted it publicly, and then, not long after, she was gone. No matter how you look at it, the outcome lands the same. The person who was speaking out, naming names, writing her story, and standing as one of the most visible survivors connected to this network is no longer here. Meanwhile, the person who could still reveal more is sitting in a prison camp with privileges, with comfort, and choosing not to say a single word. These contradictions aren't small details you can brush off. They're not simple misunderstandings. They are the actual shape of this entire story. A victim publicly said she was not at risk of self-harm and then passed away under tragic circumstances. A convicted individual is serving 20 years, yet living with comfort that feels closer to a guest than a prisoner. The government promised transparency, then turned around and said, there are no files. None of these pieces fit cleanly together. And the longer you sit with it, the more unstable it all starts to feel. It's like every answer just creates more questions instead of clearing anything up. So what are people supposed to do with all of this? The only real option is to keep watching because this situation is clearly not finished. Maxwell is still in that Texas prison camp. She still has access to those privileges, the laptop, the private meals, and she still hasn't named a single name. Giuffre may be gone, but her warning hasn't disappeared. It's still out there, still time-stamped, still directly clashing with the official version of events. That alone keeps this story alive. The contradiction is still wide open. The real question isn't just whether something is wrong, it's how deep it goes and who is still protecting who. And that's not a question that answers itself overnight. When the Epstein Files Transparency Act became law in November 2025, people thought everything was about to come out all at once. Instead, the Justice Department moved in a completely different direction. Months earlier, back in July, they had already stated that Epstein did not maintain a client list and that no more—
In her testimony that there is an effort to clear Trump specifically. A lot of the questions are specifically about Trump. A lot of the answers very complimentary even in particular sections to him. But you just made the point to me that she's actually
said Diddy was not sorry and that his apology was phony and that there was some serious harm done to the victims of this case. Like you said, they wanted a sentence of at least 11 years. Ultimately, we know a sentence has now been shared with the court of 4 years behind bars.
Files would be released. Then Congress steps in, passes a law demanding transparency, and what happens next? The response is basically, there is nothing to show. That's not accountability. That's a closed loop with no real answers coming out of it. It just keeps circling back on itself, leaving people stuck with more confusion. And here's where it gets even more intense. If there really is no list, then why did Maxwell spend years claiming in court filings that 25 powerful figures made secret settlements to keep their names hidden? That detail doesn't just disappear. Let's focus on that for a second because it actually matters. Maxwell, through her legal team, argued that 25 celebrities and powerful individuals were protected by private deals. She claimed these agreements were kept out of view during her trial. That's not random talk online, that's a statement coming directly from a defendant in a federal trafficking case. Believe her or not, the fact that it was said in legal filings, put into writing by her attorneys, gives it weight. It's not just noise, it's part of the official record. And now the Justice Department is saying no list exists. So what does that mean? Either those 25 names were completely made up for no reason, or something else is happening behind the scenes about what qualifies as a list. Now, this is where the timeline starts to feel seriously strange. Back in July 2025, the Justice Department made that clear statement, no list, no more files. Then just a few months later, in October, King Charles stripped Prince Andrew of his remaining titles and pushed him out of his royal residence. That shift didn't just happen randomly. Andrew had already settled with Joffrey years before, but for a long time, he was still being shielded. Then suddenly, when pressure started building and more attention was coming, that protection disappeared. That tells you something important. The system can act, but it doesn't always act evenly. It often moves only when someone no longer has the power to resist it. Now shift over and look at what's happening with Diddy, because this adds another layer. His release date has been moved up to April 25th, 2028. That's not small, that's more than 5 weeks earlier than originally planned. The Bureau of Prisons has it listed clearly.
Diddy and his team were very upset when they found out that this footage was part of the documentary, and they tried to shut it down, but, you know.
The act of taping it is
already
what
out.
is so
the
awful.
The act of taping it, right.
Without
Now,
Agnifalo's
Diddy would say
knowledge.
that I didn't authorize that video going out, and the argument they've made is that he's the one who has the right, that he...
We have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
Subject to
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was in Skittles.
Subject to redaction. Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with what's released.
He enrolled in an intensive program that can cut time off his sentence by as much as a year. He's currently at Fort Dix, a low-security facility in New Jersey. Not exactly the harshest environment people might imagine. On top of that, his appeal hearing is scheduled for April 2026, which could change things even more. So while many people pictured a long, heavy sentence playing out, the reality looks very different. The clock is already ticking toward an earlier exit, and this is someone who was connected to parties that Khloe Kardashian once described on camera as having half the people not wearing clothes while Justin Bieber was there. That detail alone raised eyebrows and added even more attention to everything surrounding him. None of the original contradictions have been resolved. Joffrey said clearly she was not at risk of self-harm, and then she passed away. That alone leaves a question that hasn't been answered. Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence, yet living in conditions that look more protected than punished. The government promised transparency, then turned around and said, there are no files to release. Those cracks in the story haven't closed. They've only spread wider the more people look into it. And it doesn't stop there. Ellen is in England, reportedly with no plans of coming back. Diddy is in prison, but already counting down toward an earlier release. The Kardashians are reportedly in panic, and everything around this situation just keeps building more tension. Meanwhile, everyone else is left watching, waiting, trying to figure out when something real is finally going to be said out loud. So, what do you think about all of this? Does it feel like coincidence, or does it seem like something much bigger is being kept out of sight? Drop a comment and say what you think, because the moment one piece of this falls apart, everything shifts. And honestly, it feels like that moment might come sooner than people expect. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe.